talking about infusing the global world with values as being sort of how to make globalization human, but that almost assumes that there isn't an existing set of values within the neoliberal structures themselves of economics and politics. And I would argue that there are a set of values that are there, that this economic crisis that is revealing these tensions is actually not new. The profound inequality of this world is a crisis that we've been living in. And in my mind, some of the structures within neoliberalism have created. And so isn't there inevitably actually a conflict for a person coming with a value for the collective good who is adherent to a purely neoliberal economic model?
Well, there may be.
And de facto there certainly are, right?
No, and so the follow-up question is, don't we actually need to be changing the structures themselves also?
Yeah, but I mean, I think you've got to distinguish between, as it were, what's the answer in technical terms, and what are the values that are underpinning the effort to find that answer. So, if there were a neoliberal sitting here, which there probably isn't, I'm never quite sure about myself. They might argue in certain circumstances that actually theirs does lead to a more just outcome. Now, I'll leave that to one side. The question is what is the test? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Are you trying, and if you are merely trying to achieve the most neoliberal system that you can, then that's obviously, that's not something that's born of a desire to implement certain values. But there are circumstances in which liberalization can be a value that leads to greater justice. Yeah? Okay, come back.
So that's sort of an extreme neoliberal individual. But we have an individual who may not be an extreme neoliberal, having an extreme neoliberal perspective, but operating in neoliberal structures that have been established over the course of globalization. So the question is more as that public figure of faith who desires, this collective good, don't they actually need to challenge the system in which they're operating?
Well, how do you define the system in this respect? I mean, how do you, what do you think the structures are that are problematic?
Sure. There's an elite international development structure that even in solving solutions, even in the idea of development, is one that both politically places a whole lot of power within an elite context. So it's even the democratic form that our states take, it's a step removed from a more collective form of participation, both economically and politically. And so, you have policy decisions that are being made about how to do development in the world, made by the World Bank, by IMF, that then are enforced on nations who, in order to participate, have to adopt some of the more privatization trends of the world. For example, even at the cost of indigenous views of what democracy and economic systems might look like. So, I can think of South Africa, for example, where in post-apartheid, there's a move towards adopting a more privatization model that was different from the original ANC platform, which has brought global capital to South Africa, one could argue, but there's an increasing, still to this day, inequality within the country.
But I think, Alison, what I would do is I distinguish between good and bad policy and that issue, and what are the values that we're trying to assert here. You see, I mean, I think one of the things that I think is that actually globalization is basically, I mean, I think it's a fact and it's inevitable, but I also think it's a good thing in the sense that it does break down barriers between people. But I think that without a value system to go alongside it and policy that supports that value system, then it can lead to injustice and reaction to the whole process of globalization. Now, what I would say to you is that you can have good or bad policy, but I mean, the people at the World Bank and the IMF, I mean, this has been a debate over the years, is it good for the country to privatize or is it bad? That's a good or bad policy debate. And you can find people of faith and people who believe in justice and equity on both sides of that argument. That's all I'm saying. I think that's different from saying the structure itself needs to be changed. I mean, I don't know how. You know, all I'm saying is that whatever policy decision you take, it is better if that policy decision is informed by a discussion of values and not simply interests.